Welcome again to Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. This is the third video in our little series this week to try to get a jump start on the Ranunculus, our April knit along. Check out our first video in the series where I talk a little bit more about the sweater and getting the pattern. You should get the pattern on Ravelry. And I show you some different collars. This video is going to be about the crochet chain cast on or tubular cast on, which I've done. One of my ranunculi is going to have that cast on. It's the tighter of the two cast-ons that she has written in her instructions, but they're both very stretchy and loose. This one uses a provisional cast on, and it's really fun. You're going to need more tools. There's a crochet hook involved. But without further ado, let's get to it. The tubular cast on that Midori talks about in the Ranunculus uses a crochet cast on. It's the tighter of her two. They're both very loose. And it's the one I'm going to use for my rainbow yarn, for my Cumulus rainbow. What you're going to need for this cast on is some waste yarn. And if you're not sure how much, it should still be connected to the ball, but I'm pretty sure this is going to work for me. The needle you're going to be working on, the 16-inch US 10, the yarn you're going to use, and a crochet hook. I don't need to use the yarn right away. I'm going to do my crochet cast on. So the first thing I'm going to do is with my waste yarn, I'm going to get a slip knot onto my crochet hook. I have a video, it's from my early days as a channel, on how to do a crochet cast on, a provisional cast on like this. But I'm doing it here as well because it's a little different how you release it for the ranunculus than a regular provisional cast on. But what you should do is take your crochet hook in your right hand, and even though I crochet like this, I hold the hook from on top right now for this technique. So I have the crochet hook in my right hand. I have the knitting needle in my left, and we want to cross them with the crochet hook on top. But we want the yarn to come from underneath. So hook's on top. I'm going to grab the yarn with my left hand underneath. Now for English style knitters, this is going to feel really awkward. For continental knitters, this should feel pretty good. For crocheters, this is how we hold it for crochet. So I'm going to bring the yarn over my hook, catch it in the hook, and pull it through the loop that is on my hook. That's made a loop on the knitting needle. I'm going to take the yarn, take it between the crochet hook and the needle and under the needle. The hook comes on top. Now we want to catch it in the hook. It's really coming over the top of the hook. It's wrapping the hook in an opposite direction from doing a knit stitch. And we're going to pull that. And it might be a little wonky if you're not used to crochet. We're pulling it through the loop on the crochet hook. For people who've done crochet, this will feel a little bit better. Take the yarn between the hook and the needle and under the needle. Put the hook crosswise over the needle. Catch the yarn, and I grab my hook, my loop right here, right at the bottom, so I can pull it through. Yarn goes between the two and under. Crochet hook comes over. Yarn over. Pull it through the loop on the hook and back it up so we have a new loop. Between the two tools and under the needle, crochet hook goes over. Catch a loop. Pull it through. And you're going to repeat this. Between and under, crochet hook goes over, catch, and pull. I'll do it a couple more times, and then I'll meet you at the end of this row for what we do next. Between and under the needle, crochet hook goes over, catches the yarn, pulls it through. and just let them slide back on your needle as you do more. Yarn under, hook over, catch the yarn, pull it through. Do as many as we need to do for the cast on. I'll meet you on the other side for what happens next. Now, if you notice on this cast on, you're not casting on, you're only casting on half as many as the other cast on. So I'm too shy of what I need to cast on for this pattern. So I'm going to put these last two on. You might say, that's ridiculous. That can't be enough for my collar, but it has to do with what we're going to do next. So I always like to just chain a few more, just yarning over and pulling through without the knitting needle there. So I know which end I need to release this from later. That is the whole point of a provisional cast on with waste yarn. I'm just putting my end through here so it doesn't come undone while I'm knitting my rows. The whole point is that we're going to take this out later. So at this point, it's time to start our first row with my official sweater yarn. I want the red up by my neck because there's Sundragon colors, so I'm starting from the outside. And the instructions for the setup row say to knit into this waste yarn, the first row. Again, I don't want to really reveal too much of the pattern, but we'll go over what the instructions say to do. They say to knit your first stitch. When I'm adding new yarn, I like to just grab it with the hand that's not going to hold the yarn. And if I was knitting continental, I'd do it the other way around so that the tail feels like it's attached. So I'm going to knit, and I'm going to yarn over, which is bringing my yarn to the front and over. And I'm going to do that all the way across the row. If you're knitting continental, a knit and a yarn over, the knit is there. A yarn over, it just means ducking your needle under like that. And then we knit and duck your needle under to create the yarn over. And we knit, duck the needle under. Again, for English style, just did a knit stitch there. Going to bring the yarn between the needles and over, which is what you're doing when you're knitting continental too. It just might feel a little different. Regardless, this first row for the tighter of the two very loose cast-ons, you're knitting and yarning over across the entire row. And that will double your number of stitches. And it'll feel a little bit more. I just couldn't get my wrap to stick there, but don't forget while you're talking or doing something to yarn over between every stitch. Your cast on will be a little bit closer to all the other cast on instructions. But you're not done with the setup for this one. This is the cast on that I used for my sample Ranunculus that's in the shop, and I did really like it. I had a good time with it. So stick with me and we will keep following these instructions. Here's my last knit one. I still need to make sure I have a yarn over before I join to start knitting in a circle. So I'm pulling up the other end of this. I'm easing it around. I don't want to lose this yarn over. It says place your EOR, which is end of round, which is also the beginning of your round. Place your marker. Make sure you still have a yarn over between this last stitch you knit and the one you're about to go into. Then you have 60 stitches. This is where it can get off. You get to the end of this round and that yarn over isn't there anymore. It's gonna feel a little bit weird. Cast on round 2 after this is a regular knit. Again, make sure this yarn over is still here when you go to do that. And if this feels loose, it's because it's where your tail is. You can always cinch it up again if you need to. So it says knit 1, WYIF, slip SL1, WYIF, is with yarn in front. So move your yarn to the front, slip one. You're actually slipping, and again, my tail is making this floofy. You're slipping your yarn over and then bring your yarn to the back and knit one. And you want to go around. Don't worry too much if this feels big and loose. We're going to try not to lose that yarn over. But bring your yarn to the front and slip that yarn over and yarn to the back and knit one. When you go around this round, you're always slipping the yarn over and you're always knitting the knit stitches to keep you on track. If anything feels different from that, something's gone wonky. But yarn in front and slip, and yarn in back and knit. And the other thing I should mention is when in doubt, slip things. So yarn to the front, slip things like you're going to purl them, like you're sticking your needle straight in, not like if you go to knit and slip, it's going to twist it. Slip it like it's a purl stitch. Yarn to the back and knit. Yarn to the front and slip. Yarn to the back and knit. Yarn to the front and slip. Yarn to the back and knit. Do that all the way around. It's going to almost feel like you're ribbing, but be careful not to fall into the trap of actually ribbing, of knit one, purl one. That's not what you're doing. You're slipping, you're knitting. Yarn to the front and slip, yarn to the back and knit. Yarn to the front and slip, yarn to the back and knit. Take your time with this. So you don't have to back things out and start again. Take your time to ease stuff up on your needle if you need to. Remember, when you get to the end, there should be a knit. Be careful of this guy. Don't lose him. That's your yarn over. Yarn to the front, slip, yarn to the back. Don't worry if there's a gap here. Try to keep going. Slip your marker. Now, cast on round 3 says with yarn in back, slip. So you'll be slipping the knit stitches from the row previous. And then you purl, which means you need to bring your yarn to the front. So you'll be purling those old yarn overs from 2 rows ago. Again, I'm just going to tighten up my tail there. But then move your yarn to the back to slip the knit stitch from the row before, yarn to the front and purl, yarn to the back and slip. And even though he's a knit stitch, you are slipping him purlwise. Yarn to the front and purl, yarn to the back and slip, because we just don't want to twist him. Yarn to the front and purl, yarn to the back and slip, and pay careful attention that you're purling back. You're not knitting, you're just slipping. Front, purl, back, slip. Front, purl, back, slip. For continental knitters, this is going to be the same, but I'm not as proficient with those types of stitches, so I'm only showing you English style right now. Back, slip, front, purl, back, slip, front, purl. Do this all the way around. Your knit stitches from the row before should always be slipped, and what you slipped last time is now being purled. Make sure you're changing where your yarn is for each thing that you're doing, though. That is essential for this coming out correctly. Purl, back, slip, front, purl, back, slip, front, purl. Do that all the way around. Here's the end of that row. It ends with a purl. Now the instructions are going to want you to repeat what you just did. So you start with a knit on this one and then bring it forward and slip and backwards and knit and forward and slip and backwards and knit. Follow the instructions for the repeat. And I'll meet you back here after that for what happens next. Now that I'm done with my cast on rows with knitting or purling and slipping, she wants you to do the rib rows, and she wants you to do just one row of knit one, purl one, and then a certain number of rows of knitting through the back loop after this row and purling one. So follow her instructions, and I'll meet you on the other side of that, which will be a few minutes for me, but just seconds for you in terms of this video, because I want to show you what happens to this provisional cast on. Usually you have to worry about live stitches, but you don't with this. I want you to see what it looks like. It's a little bit different than other provisional cast-ons you might have worked with, but I'd like you to see what happens with mine so you're prepared for what will happen with yours. So I've reached the end of all of my ribbing and cast on rows and all that stuff. I'm gonna lock this in, and my cat's trying to say hi. I'm gonna do one more stitch past this. And it says to release my waste yarn. And for many people, this is a terrifying moment, because usually provisional cast on means that you have live stitches when you do this, but because of those cast on rows, this will be okay. But it will feel like it's still attached until the very end. So I have the end that I did all those extra chains, and I've released my end yarn, and I'm just going to start pulling. And what it's going to do, it's going to pull these crochet stitches out, but your yarn is still trapped. It's not going to stay there forever. So just keep pulling. Just keep gently pulling. It's pulling out you don't have to cut this out. If everything has gone right, you can keep pulling. If it gets stuck on the yarn you use, just give a little tug. Just give a little tug. Keep tugging here. If you need to, tug right here. I can pull this, it'll pull tight all the way to my first slip knot. If I pull that out, then I just keep pulling and keep pulling and keep pulling. Keep going, get it out of there, and look. It's okay. Nothing is going to come undone. And you have this really cool tubular cast on, where it looks, the tubular means that it looks like the knit stitches just go over and down the back side. This is what the tighter cast on will do for you. And now you can go on to your increases. Thanks for joining us for the crochet chain cast on for the Ranunculus. Check out the first video in the series, like I mentioned before, if you want to see how some of them compare if they're made out of the same yarn. No, the yarn can change how all these come out. The next video in the series is going to be on if you just want to use long tail but make it a little stretchier, you can hold 2 needles together. So we'll show that to you very quickly. And once you've picked a collar and you've done it, the next video we put out will be about how to do your next increase row. May your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. Bye-bye now.